Hello everybody and welcome to Horror Movie Breaker. Today, we're going to take a look at a classic horror film, The Blair Witch Project. Now, perhaps you're wondering why I kind of hesitated when I called it a classic horror film. I mean, it's not like it isn't a classic horror film, but I just don't really like this movie. Honestly, I think The Blair Witch is overrated. Though for the most part, this doesn't seem to be that much of an unpopular opinion. The thing is that this movie, from what I gathered back when IMDb actually had message boards, people either loved or hated the Blair Witch Project. Of course, I fell into the latter. For the longest time, I considered this not just one of the worst horror movies of all time, but one of the worst movies I had ever seen, period. Now, that spot has been firmly taken by Uwe Boll's House of the Dead. Oh, I'll get to you eventually. This was because when I was younger, I had no deep understanding of filmmaking in general, and I hated the Blair Witch Project, mostly for one reason. It felt pointless. It felt like I didn't watch a story. I just saw a bunch of people wandering through the woods, and then it ends. Roll credits. As the years went by, I tried watching it again and again just to see if I could find out what it was that other people saw in this movie. But I never could. I still saw it as a pointless mess. Every time I asked people why they liked it, they would usually respond with, "It's good. You just have to use your imagination." My response to that was, if you're just gonna fill every single blank the filmmaker leaves, why not just stare at a blank wall and call it art? It wasn't until learning more about the art of filmmaking and storytelling that I learned about the use of subtlety and ambiguity. I learned how leaving it up to interpretation could be a powerful asset in stories. Leaving things up in the air enough for people to project their own ideas onto the film allows the story to be more personal. And that's what the defenders of the Blair Witch Project are basically saying the movie does. Saying that because the movie never shows the witch, or a lot for that matter, it allows the viewer to project their own thoughts into the film and allows the witch to look like anything, thus making the movie more likely than not universally scary. And from that perspective, it actually sounds brilliant. However, ambiguity is a double-edged sword. What if the viewer simply doesn't care? Leaving things up to interpretation only works if the audience is interested enough to fill in the blanks. Take for instance the ending of Inception. The movie prior to that ending was interesting and exciting. It had likable characters and good performances, so when the ending comes and we don't see if the top falls or not, we speculate because we already cared about Hobbs and his struggle. Another reason why I particularly don't care for this is because, truth be told, the unknown isn't that scary to me, at least in films. The element of ambiguity in the unknown depends greatly on execution. Personally, I tend to find movies that leave no questions answered more annoying than scary, because then I'll start thinking about that unknown and it'll drive me fucking nuts. I'm just not really scared by that. I'm more curious. Guess I'd probably be the first guy to die in a horror movie, huh? But anyway, this is why I admire movies that leave things to the imagination and still manage to work, because that's actually very hard to do. Going back to Inception, the other reason the ambiguity of the ending works is because it doesn't matter. Is Hobbs awake or is he asleep? I don't know, but regardless of which side you fall on, the story still works. The plot was about Hobbs coming to terms with the death of his wife, and that happens regardless of which ending you choose to follow. So even though the ending is left up to us, the plot of the film is solid enough to enjoy it regardless. And thus, I don't have to wrap my brain around having watched an entire film just to see, what the fuck was that ending about? In the Blair Witch Project, there's very little to take away from the ending. What's it all about? What was the point of everything? I know it's a found footage movie, so from the get-go, you know everyone is pretty much going to die. That's the whole premise. But after the illusion of the found footage style fades away and, you remember that this isn't real, you stop caring about these characters who have no personality or depth. I know I'm ripping this movie apart, so let me at least say something nice about it. It is commendable the realistic approach the film takes. Most found footage movies, at least nowadays, tend to have the camera guy shake the camera while, running, and then framing the monster or ghost or whatever perfectly, and then running away. Yeah, most of the time it isn't very effective and you can totally tell what they're doing. However, the Blair Witch Project nailed the found footage approach, despite being the first successful film of this subgenre. Hell, if I'm not mistaken, this is the movie that pretty much created the subgenre. Forget Cannibal Holocaust, it's only half a found footage movie. But, like I said before, this realistic approach is kind of the problem. Because it's shot in such a realistic manner, not showing everything, because real found footage wouldn't necessarily have everything framed perfectly, it leaves too much to the imagination and nothing to hold on to in terms of the story and the characters. I mean, a bunch of stuff happens and I'm just not sure what to feel or think about it. For example, due to the nature of the film, the witch seems so powerful that I'm honestly wondering why she takes so long to kill them. I mean, why is she fucking with them like this? It's pretty stupid when you really think about it. I mean, you could say the same thing about somebody like Jason Voorhees, for instance, since he's unkillable and can technically just mow through people left and right. But even then, there's some logic to systematically killing people in a stealthy manner so nobody runs away or calls the cops. I mean, just because you're undead doesn't mean you have to make your job any harder than it should be. The witch seems to be omnipresent somewhat, but all she does is mess with them. Why? What's the point? What's her goal? Why doesn't she just take them out already? Is she trying to brainwash them? Is that her endgame? You don't know what she wants, and because of that, you don't really care. And that's why that's my biggest problem with this movie. It's too ambiguous. A lot of what happens is left up to the imagination, and that is the crux of the problem. Since everything is left up in the air like that, and I don't know the witch's real motivations, or even what she looks like, how am I supposed to be invested in the plight of our protagonists if I have no clue what they're up against? It could be Jason taking a break from Camp Crystal Lake for all I know. I don't know how people were ever afraid of this movie. Hell, some of the taglines make me laugh. Scarier than The Exorcist. The scariest movie of all time is a true story. Uh-huh, I believe you. Now, the movie does what it sets out to do well. Too well. And because of that, it loses me as a viewer. However, I still have to give credit where it's due. The marketing for the film was actually pretty fucking brilliant, and the tagline of the poster was chilling and set the premise and idea of what they were going for very nicely. I know this isn't something people normally praise a movie for, but it's still worth noting. After all, it managed to get millions of people interested enough in the film to want to see it. And lastly, I do have to praise the title of the movie. It's weird, I know, but The Blair Witch Project, I think that's probably the best horror movie name ever. Like, you don't really need a tagline, you just say, The Blair Witch Project, and you're good. It's ominous and intriguing. I just really, really love that title. Too bad the movie couldn't be just as good. So, suffice it to say, I don't like this movie, but it does what it sets out to do, and at the very least I can respect it for it. Still, this is boring and uninteresting to me. Given the rise of found footage movies, it's hard to deny the film's legacy and impact on cinema, for better or for worse. I mean, how many movies can say that? And even though I still don't like it, at the very least, I understand it now. And it goes to show that perhaps you should revisit some films that you hated as a kid. I mean, they may not be as bad as you thought they were. Except for House of the Dead, which is god fucking awful. This was Horror Movie Breaker, and I'll see you guys next time.